First of all, I wanted to thank you for your time, your participation, and joining me for this session. I have to say the light is quite bright, so I cannot see, but this is a very, very important topic. We all agree that decarbonization is the biggest challenge of our time. And buildings have a big, big role to play. We all know, and we saw the data, 37% of the CO2 emission comes from buildings. The question is for us together how we can change the trajectory and how we can contribute towards a better climate. So before I start, let me level set and present some facts so that we all frame the problem and what could we do about it. Our research is telling us that if we have to tackle the problem of decarbonization in buildings, there are two types of CO2s, which is what we say is operate and maintain operational carbon, which is really the CO2 emitted during the use of buildings, whether it's a heating, cooling, and so on and so forth. And then there is a 30% carbon, which we call embodied carbon, which is related to the construction material, concrete, steel, aluminum used in the building. So really the equation is 30% embodied, 70% operational carbon, and that itself tells us where the big opportunities are, which is operational carbon. Now, we are in Europe. If you think about it, 80% of the buildings that exist today will be in use in 2050, 80%. And when we look at the life cycle carbon of those buildings, and here is an example of an average building, and we see the life cycle carbon, we have two choices, how to reduce the carbon. One choice is we obviously demolish this building and build new buildings. Second is we take those buildings and transform these buildings to be net zero. Our research is showing us that we have a great opportunity actually to invest technology and take the existing building and retrofit, and that could actually be much better proposition. Not to say we don't need to build new building, but if you really have an option, that will be a great proposition, because when we transform existing building, we don't need to spend new concrete and material and aluminum, and we don't have to have new embodied carbon. We can really act on the operational carbon side of the equation. So together, for all of us, a great opportunity to transform 80% of the buildings that are in Europe to take it to net zero. Now, when we think about retrofit is a great opportunity, what does it mean? We think there are three types of retrofits we can do. One is light intervention, or light, I would call it a renovation. Then there is a medium, and then there is a deep renovation. What does it mean? Light means minimal disruption to the building. That means people can continue to work, they can live, they can continue to operate, but you can deploy some of the energy efficiency measures in those buildings and can get the savings. If you go to the extreme side, deep renovation, obviously you start to touch the structure, core and shell of the building, some of the structural changes, and that also means that you will have to go through a certain level of disruption of the building. The answer is not one or another. The answer is really depends on the ROI, the level of disruption, the level of the building's existing state, and also the geography as well. So all of those things taking into account, we together have a choice to pick the right renovation lever. Now, across those three levers, or three sort of renovation, we think there are 10 priorities that everybody can embark on. And we kind of say the first three, which is written here, strategize and digitize are the foundational priorities. Why? Every investor, every developer, every owner, if you have assets of building or you are building assets, you really need to first start thinking about my goal. If I have a goal of 10 years, 15 years to transform this building, what's my strategy, what's my roadmap? So we need to think about it defining a clear decarbonization roadmap. That's the foundation. And here at Schneider, we can really help with some of our strategy and sustainability advisor. We can help you define the right journey for decarbonization. The second piece is super important. And I remember, we always say what we cannot measure, we cannot kind of, change. So putting a digital infrastructure is super, super important, which is what's my energy footprint today? What's my carbon footprint today? Once you have a baseline, that establishes the foundation where you want to go and what speed I'm going to go. So you have the foundation, then you can start to put the measures, and then you can start to monitor. So for me, strategizing and digitization is the foundation of your journey, and then you have a range of what we call decarbonization lever that you can deploy depending on your types of buildings to get to net zero. If I take a few examples, we believe at Schneider, we can 77% of the operational carbon we can help you reduce with 5 of those big decarbonization levers. If I think about it, the 2 on the left side you see, one is basic measurement, as I said, with our metering and power management infrastructure. The second is the automation control on the efficiency side. And these 2 are really on the demand side, sustainable. Once you deploy, they live with the life of the building. Whereas other levers are, you can improve the power quality, you can upgrade the electrical infrastructure, you can deploy microgrid, local distributed energy resources, or you can compensate with the offset. So really light intervention on the left side or demand side, and then on the supply side variables or levers on the right side. Together, these decarbonization levers, you have a big chance to make an impact on the carbon footprint of the buildings. So now, if we sum it up, we know retrofit is a priority, operational carbon is a priority. We have clear tools available to all of us. The question is, how can we achieve? The reality is, we need to go 3 times faster versus what we have done to be able to really achieve the ambitious goals we have. And with that, we cannot do it ourselves, Schneider. We need collaborators and partners like you. And I'm very proud to invite Dr. Will Cavendish, who is an impact maker, Director of Digital Services at Arup. Will, welcome.
Thanks very much, Manish. It's great to see you this morning.
Great to see you.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you.
So Will, we said we need to go 3 times faster, right? So what's your first reaction to some of the messages,
Yeah, look, I think everything that you've just said is spot on. If anything, I would want to emphasize both the carbon story, but also increasingly the financial side of things as well. So to take an example, we did a piece of work a little while back for a European bank. Mm-hmm. We looked at all of the buildings that they currently own, and we looked at the degree to which they were going to become quote-unquote stranded assets because of the trajectory of decarbonisation. And we found that by the end of this decade, around about sort of half of the buildings were going to be unusable from a carbon point of view, and by 2045, about 90% of those buildings were likely to be stranded assets. Now that is a huge financial impact on an organisation. If 90% of the assets you own look like they're going to have zero value, that is very significant. So everything is there, absolutely right, but increasingly we're seeing the financial and the business impacts of these things being very significant for the organizations.
I think what you said is extraordinary, because we started with addressing the climate goal. It also became cost competitiveness because of energy prices, and it's also a financial risk from it. So we have actually a true case to embark on decarbonization.
Yeah, absolutely right, absolutely right.
So, Bill, I'm going to ask you, you are part of the digital services, you're leading digital services for Arup. What is the decarbonization vision at Arup? What you see as the journey?
Yeah, well, I guess, many of the things you touched on, and at their heart, of course, digital data and AI are going to be really critical, but I think we see things sitting on 4 main, pillars. The first one, we need to be far better at designing new buildings that have lower embodied carbon and lower operational carbon across their whole lifetime. That's important for us in Arup. Secondly, we've got to be decarbonizing and doing the quick and easy stuff as quickly as we possibly can. You touched on some of those things already. But astonishingly, when we start looking at buildings, most of the ones we look at, the building owners are heating and cooling the same part of the building at the same time. I mean, this is just crazy from a cost point of view and also from a carbon point of view. So there's a bunch of easy stuff that can be done. Monitor, track, do some on-site insulation, all kinds of different things. Thirdly, then organizations need to get much more fundamental about digitizing and electrifying their buildings. Because in the end, the operational carbon side of things is going to be solved often through grids. And then finally, and really importantly, we need to be reorienting our entire business away from knocking things down and building new towards cherishing, repurposing and refurbishing what we've already got, the 80% of buildings that you talked about. And we're developing some quite interesting uses of machine learning in order to exactly reorient the business towards refurbishing and repurposing. So I think all of those four things we see as really important.
So digitization, electrification, designing right. I want to touch upon the topic that you mentioned, but I know you guys have been doing lots of projects, lots of studies. You mentioned about machine learning. I'm intrigued by the study that you guys are doing on some of those aspects. I'm happy to hear a little bit of the details on your study.
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago at COP26, we signed up to the net zero building commitment. 0% operational carbon by 2030 and 40% reduction in embodied carbon. And then we sort of came back home to Arup headquarters and realized that actually we had very little information about this. So we made a commitment to do whole life carbon assessments on all of our new and refurbished building projects. And we've now done 1,000 of those studies on about 1,400 buildings in 30 countries. And there's some pretty powerful things coming out of it. The first one is people often describe data as sort of dirty. I mean, data in the built environment, it's filthy. I mean, it's really, really bad. And so we've put a lot of time and effort in just trying to create some common data standards, common data platforms in order to create a shared understanding about what the whole life carbon impact of a building is. And that includes, really complicated and detailed carbon standards. So one of the things that we all need to do as an industry actually is lean into the creation of way better data, and that's something that came through powerfully. A second thing that came through really powerfully was actually there's quite a lot of specificity. Different buildings, different places, different times are going to need different treatments for their decarbonisation pathway. That's not an argument for employing Arup everywhere, although obviously I'd love it if people did. But it is a recognition that there's some sophisticated and intelligent choices that are needed. But then the third thing was that when we looked at these 1,000 studies that we've done, we are forecasting a 40% reduction in overall carbon between now and the end of the decade. That's good, but it's not nearly enough. This is your point about three times faster. So, and a lot of that's coming out of changes that are happening to the grid, not changes that are happening to the buildings and the buildings' operations themselves. So we're not doing enough, are we, to implement all of the things we know that can be cost effective here and now in trying to decarbonize our existing buildings, insulation, switching to LED lightings, on-site renewables, some of the sort of simpler changes that can be made to buildings to do it. So that was a really sort of powerful finding that came out of those studies. And then finally, as the operational carbon sides of things gets done, and that's still a huge challenge, embodied carbon is going to be the really difficult thing. Carbon, cement, steel, aluminium, brick, all of these are high carbon goods. And so we're going to need new approaches to tackle those things. So I think this is the first time anybody has done such a comprehensive study, and we've sort of published all of that, and we've published a lot of it around the pain points that we've taken in actually doing that study in order to sort of share with the whole industry and the whole world, some of the learning that we've undertaken, but some quite powerful insights coming out of that.
And I'm glad you mentioned this industry, building industry, needs better quality data.
Oh, absolutely.
You said we are lack of it, which creates doubts, misconceptions, myths. So higher quality of research. So thanks for undertaking the research on 1,000+ buildings and promoting the better quality of data. I think that's going to bust some of those myths that exist in this industry.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued because you mentioned one thing. You said around structural integrity and structure and embodied carbon. You have analyzed some of those buildings from a structural standpoint, where there is a myth that probably we need to demolish building because we cannot change this building. Can you shed a little bit more light on the retrofit and how existing building can be repurposed?
Sure, no, thanks so much. So I guess this is a case where the new abilities of machine learning and artificial intelligence are proving really, really powerful. Because when it comes to a building that is 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, often there's an orientation to modernize those buildings.
Yeah.
But people look at them and say, well, this was built to different structural standards, it was using materials, they're 50 years old, often the design life of those was 50 years. We need to demolish it because it's not safe. And the reason for that is actually quite difficult to understand whether a building is structurally stable or not. When it's designed, you think about load-bearing factors, you think about gravity and how it's distributed through the building, and you design all your way around it. So how can you show that if you repurpose a building and if you change it, that it's going to be structurally stable and it's going to work? And that's been a real problem in the past. What we've started to do is start using things like vibration analysis, or you can fire noise monitors at buildings, and you can receive a signal back to understand what's underneath, what's within the cement, within the steel, within the structure, and whether it's structurally stable or not. And we did this recently in a quite a landmark building in London, actually, where the orientation really was to sort of say it's old, it won't be occupied, it's too small, it's pokey, the facade is grim, it was concrete monstrosity, let's get rid of it. And so we sort of tried to say, well, hold on a minute, let's at least do the analysis. And what we found, again, using machine learning to interpret the results of all of these data that you could now get from structural understanding, that actually the building was in decent shape, much better than people thought. And that if you hollowed it out internally, you opened up its space, created greater light and greater space, it would still be a very stable and productive building. And that oriented the owners towards repurposing it rather than demolishing it. And I think those are the kinds of new techniques that we're going to need to bring to bear, because otherwise we're just going to be demolishing buildings left, right, and center, and the Earth can't take it. We cannot take the amount of carbon it would take to replace those buildings. So a great example of where machine learning is actually giving us some new capabilities.
You made a great point, and this is where I think technology has a massive role to what I call bust some of the myths that exist in this industry. Here you take an example of saying, actually the building is great, it can be repurposed, we don't need to demolish, we can actually retrofit, and the machine learning and the data shows us that it's structurally sound. Yes, there may be improvements to be made, but we can do it. And I think we see the same thing on the operational side as well. People have not good understanding of where are the source of inefficiencies, where's my existing energy and carbon footprint, so that kind of pollutes the choices you make as well. So having that foundational technology elements can really help people make the right decision and choices and orient towards more retrofitting and getting more return on investment. Now, I want to pivot towards one of those case studies or one of the work we have done together with a leading hotel, IHG. You want to share about it? Because that's also another hotel where we have together done the work in collaboration on modernization of that hotel. Yeah,
this was a very nice piece of work that we did together actually for IHG. IHG is interesting. I mean, they're a big hotel chain. People will know them. They have around about 6,000 hotels in their business, but of course they actually franchise over 95% of those hotels. So actually they own very few. But they've made a very significant decarbonisation commitment. As is typical, their chief executive has got up at a place like Davos and makes some bold, carbon commitment, and then the organisation goes, "Holy cow!" Right? How are we going to do it? Right? So they came to us mutually and said, "This is the challenge we face." So what we thought they would really need was a really good way of taking all the different kind of data that you can take. Data that's specific to the hotel, data that's specific to the area that it's built in, the climate conditions, some of the operational use, and try and figure out a tool that gives very practical advice and guidance to hotel managers who are busy people and work on some quite tight margins as to what the cost-effective things that they can do from a financial point of view and an ROI point of view that reduce energy and reduce carbon. So that's what we worked on. We worked on together. We developed a digital tool for IHG that took all of the different kind of data of different sorts, chunked it through some pretty sophisticated energy and financial modeling, and then provided a very kind of easy to use operational guide and advice for a hotel owner as to what the practical things are that they could do to reduce carbon. And I think we've got a slide on it in a moment.
And that's where I forgot to click the clicker, and thank you very much.
But it's the sort of things you'd expect. So upgrade your BMS system, guest room management, switch from fossil fuels, put in low emission for LED lighting and so on. And if you do that, you'll get some energy savings, you'll get some cost reductions and cutting carbon. And IHG have now made that available to anybody who wants it, any of the franchisees who want it, just to enable them to live up to the IHG's own commitment on decarbonisation. So nice piece of work they did. It got quite detailed and quite operational, for the people who are running those hotels.
And I'm very super proud of the work. I mean, these are the collaboration that kind of, brings out, as you said, very practical details that what you can deploy in the hotel. There are facts here: net zero by 2050, 30% energy saving for this particular property, the carbon footprint. And in a way, it has created a blueprint and kind of a playbook for, as you said, 6,000 hotels they have globally. All the franchise owners can kind of leverage the playbook and kind of embark on that journey. I want to kind of, say, we have done this for hotel, you have done these 1,000 projects, overall, many more actually. What do you think we need to do to even more accelerate this, journey for other types of building beyond hotel? What's your kind of, vision and, what you see as a journey for other types of buildings,
Well, it's been interesting. I mean, this piece of work we did, I mean, the sort of numbers on the slide that we're sharing were the forecasts of what would happen for the hotels. 2 or 3 years on, there's now about 500 hotels that are actually using this system. And for IHG as an organisation, they can actually see all of that. So they're now learning a lot more about what works and what doesn't work. And they're now developing a standard for really ultra low carbon for all of their new build hotels. So that learning is feeding into a sector-wide development. Now, it's 500 of the hotels, not 6,000, so they've got a bit of work to do to kind of really sort of embed that in the sector. But I think there's a range of learnings perhaps that we can take from all of this work. The first is that if we're thinking about decarbonisation and how to accelerate it, the first thing I would say is really for all organisations to put that at the heart of their business strategy. Right? This is CEO, CFO, CAO work, not just the work for sustainability officers and digital officers. It's like it needs to be right at the heart of your business strategies. The second thing I think is do the easy stuff as quickly as you can. There's absolutely no doubt that carbon and carbon standards are ratcheting up. They're getting more serious. They're going to become the operational reality for all of us. And I think that's a good thing. But I would crack on and get the easy to do things. You've shared some of them. We've shared some of them. As quickly as you can. The third thing I'd say is, really start thinking about the fundamental digitization and electrification. Those are the things that are going to power the next wave. So you can get the easy stuff, start really preparing the investment plans and the operational plans for full electrification, digitization, and then I think finally, think lifetime. We've got to take more responsibility and more stewardship of the things that we already have. We've got to be thinking about how we can retain and augment and enhance their value over time, and that's a change in mindset. But I think it's one that we're going to need to do if we're going to reconcile, our needs with the needs of the planet.
And Will, these are kind of golden words. You said, I'm going to repeat, just for all of us. We said, sustainability is not the job only of Chief Sustainability Officer. It has to be the heart of the business strategy. Then there are low-hanging fruits. People should just embark on that. And to complement, we have a small hotel actually in France, which deployed similar to, energy monitoring, efficiency, just being aware of what your footprint are. And just being aware, they were able to save 15% through the behavioral changes itself.
Yeah.
So you don't need to kind of have a massive plan. You can always do step by step, start with the low-hanging fruits. And as you said, there are tools available, and there are examples like IHG available. Let's be aware and let's embark on some of those. Now, maybe just to wrap up a bit, this industry is slow-moving, right? We all agree, right? This industry is not as still embarking on digitization. What's your message to the broader ecosystem of stakeholders here? What do you think we need to do in the next cycle to really go 3 times faster? What do you like to pass the message?
I think it's the things we've been talking about, and I think it's vital for leadership to own and lead these sort of actions and these strategies and these plans. So I hope we're all going to go out of these kinds of sessions and the next day re-enter our businesses and say this has got to be at the heart of what we do. We've got to like invest in it, plan it, operate it. We've got to make it work. And delay is going to cost.
Yeah.
It's going to cost money. You're going to find it more difficult to attract tenants. You're going to find it more difficult to get insurance. You're going to pay brown premium. There's going to be a green benefit, not a brown premium. This is going to cost the organisation. So accelerate because it's the right thing to do for the planet, but accelerate because it's the right thing to do for the business. And that's, I think, like a key thing for us all to do.
I can tell you on our side, Schneider side, we have taken a commitment to meet the carbon goals. Right. Every building that we are in, we are taking very proactive measures on, we have our own decarbonization roadmap. I think all of us, we have a role to play. As Will said, we can have this session, but when we kind of leave this session, we go back into the business. It's super important for us to reflect on how we can increase the pace. We all have a role to play as leaders in this industry. And sort of that will be kind of my sort of collective call to say we have a way to accelerate. We together can be an impact maker in our own scope, and we can do that. And the reality is it's not a problem that we don't know the solution. We have the solutions. It's a matter of leadership. Yeah. It's a matter of embarking on the journey, and it's embarking on deployment of these solutions so that we can create a better future for our next generation. Now, I want to invite all of you. We have our booth here, innovation booth. There are a range of solutions there. We'll love to invite you to discover. We have experts here. Please talk to them. We also welcome your feedback, because we want to improve. We want to invent the future. If you have great feedback on things that work, doesn't work, please share with us, share with those experts. So really invite you to our innovation booth and discover our solution and give feedback. I'm also personally available to connect with me and happy to get your feedback as well. With that, I want to say thank you very much. Thank you, Will. Really appreciate you participating here. Thank you very much. Thank you.